Hello, guys, and welcome back to the NW Sportscast. We are back, me and Levi, and we're going to be talking about spring training for the Seattle Mariners. It starts this Saturday, I believe, but the first MLB spring training game is tonight. I think the Dodgers are playing against someone, but that's not what we're talking about. We're going to be going over the Mariners roster, and I'm going to be asking Levi, overrated or underrated? Levi, how do you think about this segment's gonna go?
I think it's gonna be pretty fun. I have a feeling I'm gonna talk about a lot of players being underrated, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a layup to start this off.
Okay,
George Kirby. I think
George Kirby.
maybe according to me, maybe one of the more underrated players on Seattle Mariners organization. But what do
Yeah.
you say?
So am I going off of how the national media perceives them?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
okay, yeah. Well, then in that case, I would say George Kirby. I think is slightly underrated. He did get his flowers. MLB ranked him in the top 100. And to be fair, they didn't rank a lot of pitchers in their ranking list. But at the same time, putting George Kirby, he didn't even make the top 75. I believe he was like number 81. And that feels too low for him. I feel like George Kirby should be higher than that. I think that he has proven that he is one of the best young arms in the entire game
Wow.
of baseball. I mean, when you go your first two seasons as dominant as him, yeah, he's really good player. I think he's a future Cy Young contender. He made his All-Star game last year, and he probably will make more. So yeah, I'm gonna go. I don't think he's vastly underrated. He does have the fifth highest Cy Young odds, so from that perspective, yeah, that's pretty good for him. But I would say he's slightly underrated.
Slightly underrated. I like that. I think he definitely is underrated. Look, this is a guy that I think can go and win a Cy Young, and I know the odds reflect that because Vegas is smart. But when you look at the national landscape, if you ask a random guy from New York, who George Kirby is, most of them don't know who
They
he is.
might not know. Yeah,
So it's kind of like when you look at it from that perspective, I definitely think maybe not so much underrated, but unknown for the level of
yeah.
skill that George Kirby is going to bring into 2024. I'm gonna kind of just bebop all around the Mariners franchise with no rhyme or reason, Levi. So this
Okay.
next guy, I think, is gonna be a little bit harder to judge because we don't really know what he's gonna do in 2024. He's a guy that went to Driveline, did a lot of work. Recently, just went on 710 and kind of talked about his time at Driveline and how much that's helped his swing. Apparently, he's added 3 miles per hour to his swing velo, and that's Ty France, our first baseman for the Seattle Mariners. Do you think he's overrated or underrated?
Well, France is weird because his first season he came in and he had a really good batting average and didn't do a whole lot else. And I think he was overrated in his first season. And then he made the All Star game in year two, and
Yeah,
then last year he fell apart. And I think there's a lot of fans who wanted to give up on him. I mean, even you were not sold on him being our first baseman this season. You talked about wanting Pete Alonso. And
yeah,
so
true.
after seeing all the fans this offseason wanting to bail on him, I think he is now underrated because I see players do this all the time. Players have down years and then the next year they get better. Especially if they're not past like 32, 33. A lot of times, if you're like Ty France is 30, so if you have a down season at 30 or 29, and then you come back the next season, you can easily bounce back from that. And I expect Ty France to bounce back.
Yeah.
And the drive line should help. You got to hope that that helps. He's also cut down his weight. That's a good sign. Getting more athletic. Maybe he won't be the slowest runner in Major League Baseball this year,
True.
but
He was a pretty good defensive first baseman though last year. Give him
he's
some
always
credit.
he's always been good at defense. Yeah. So I think he's underrated. I think fans don't realize he's still at worst probably the 15th, 16th best first baseman in baseball, and he's definitely still has top 10 potential.
Yeah, I would say Ty France it's really hard to judge. I'm on his stats right now. Levi, he's played 152 games, 140 and 158 in his last three. He's
Yeah,
had
he's very consistent, reliable.
over 550 ABs in the last 3 years. And then the year before that, he only had 86 ABs in 55. So he's really ramped up how much he's been at the plate these last 3 years. And I think it just kind of caught up to him to be quite frank, last year. But even last year, you look at it, he hit 250. I mean, it's not great, and I know average isn't everything. And for a first baseman, he doesn't provide a lot of power. You want a lot more, slugging out of a first baseman than Ty France provides. So I'm gonna say he is a slightly overrated just because I
Wow.
think all of these Mariner fans are looking at Driveline and saying, "Oh, he's gonna be so amazing first
Yeah.
baseman." And I think that's kind of unrealistic, to be honest. And I don't think that's Ty France's fault necessarily. I think people are looking at JP Crawford and saying, "Oh, well, he went to Driveline and now he's just, he's a stud. Like Ty France is gonna be." The next coming of God, like he's just gonna be some amazing dude. Like I don't know if that's gonna happen, but we'll see, and I hope it does. But coming up next is that guy, JP Crawford, and this is really tough for me.
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say about this.
So JP, so I'm going to preface it with this. Personally, I think every single shortstop in baseball is overrated because they're shortstops. I know shortstop is valuable, especially for defense, but I see Corey Seager get ranked ahead of Aaron Judge in the latest MLB rankings. Like, there's no way. He's just not as good. Like, I
No,
know Corey Seager's good. He won the World Series, but if Aaron Judge is healthy, Aaron Judge hits 60 home runs. Corey Seager can't. So I think every single shortstop in baseball is overrated because of their
I don't know
position.
about that, but I understand what you're saying.
But if you compare him to other shortstops, I think he is very evenly rated. I think everyone kind of woke up like last season and realized JP's a top 10 shortstop, and he's about the ninth or 10th best shortstop out there right now. And I think that's pretty even. He was rated, I believe, number 10 by MLB. And that's about where he is. You could argue maybe he's a little bit underrated, but I think I'm pretty happy with where he is. I mean, he's not Lindor, he's not Xander Bogaerts. Even in a down year, Bogaerts had very similar numbers to JP. JP's best year and Bogart's worst year are pretty much the same year. So I mean that tells you what you need to know. But compared to 15, 20 other teams, yeah, there's a lot of teams that wish they had JP Crawford on their team. And so I think he's pretty fairly rated.
Yeah, I would say from a national landscape, he is fairly rated. But when you look at it from what Mariners fans think, I think he is
He's
slightly
maybe a little over.
overrated. And
Yeah,
that's because
I can see that.
when you look at his stats, yes, they are so much better than last year, especially his slugging and his OPS. His OPS went up by 140 points, Levi. His batting average climbed by 20 points, and the big thing was his home runs that increased by 13. And he had 19 homers. This is a guy that could barely reach the outfield fence, a year and a half ago. But I just have some gut feeling, and I really don't like it, and I wish I didn't have this, and
That he's going to
I
regret.
hope I'm wrong. I think he's gonna regress in 2024.
Well, I think the home runs will probably regress just because normally when guys always average between a certain amount of home runs and then all of a sudden out of the blue they hit a bunch, usually that doesn't stick around. Like, we've seen Mark Trumbo hit 20 20 20 20 40 20 20. So it's like sometimes guys have weird years where they hit a bunch of homers. I do think JP is going to be able to maintain the on base percentage though, because his plate discipline was so good last. I mean, he was
Yeah,
walking. Didn't he walk like the third most in the American League? He was really really good at his plate discipline. So I think that will carry over. So I still think he's going to be good. You might not see the home runs, but because home runs are kind of
I
fluky.
hope I'm wrong about the feeling I have. I just
Yeah.
just the eye test last year showed me he played a little bit better than I think he was actually of a player, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like I think he just isn't as good as what his numbers say he was in 2023.
Yeah.
But I
What
do
was his
think
OPS last year? Was it like 820,
his OPS was 818,
818? Yeah. So I would say I'm gonna guess he probably has an OPS maybe closer to 790, somewhere in that range.
which is still a
And
huge leap.
which is still good. Which is still good. Yeah. I think the OPS will drop probably a little bit, and that's just because I think, like you said, power will probably not be as prevalent. But I still think good on base, good batting average, good defense, and good leadership. I mean, he's a good leader.
Yeah. the next guy I said I was going to go all around the map. I'm going to go with Andres Munoz, the guy that
Oh, okay. Well,
he
so again,
throws
so it's
fire,
similar. Yeah.
closer. What do you think?
Well, similar to shortstops, this is the opposite. I think all shortstops are overrated. I think closers and relievers in general are vastly underrated by the media because sure, they only pitch, 3 times a week for, 1 inning a game, but the best closers are insanely good. And to have a guy who can go out and shut the other team down 55 times in the ninth inning a season, that's a vastly underrated quality. And people don't realize that. I mean, I think every single closer in the league, even the best, are underrated in that sense. And I think for a closer, Andres Munoz is underrated. We don't get anyone in the national media talking about Munoz as one of the best closers in baseball. We hear Josh Hader, we hear, Devin Williams, we hear Jordan Hicks, we hear Aroldis Chapman. These guys are really good, but Andres Munoz, he has all the same capabilities as those guys. And all you have to do is look at the baseball savant. It's like red, 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 red. It's all red. Like you look at his baseball savant, it's all red. And that tells you all you need to know. Maybe the ERA, the ERA last year wasn't amazing, but it was still below 3. I mean, it was still fine. And when you
Yeah.
have the skills that he has, 100 miles an hour, he's throwing gas, he's getting guys to strike out on a league high rate. He's not giving up hard contact. He's not giving up a bunch of home runs. He's a little bit wild, but he's really gotten better at that. I don't see any reason why he should not be considered one of the game's top closers, other than maybe the results haven't been there for long enough, but he's going to get those results this year.
He definitely is underrated. But when you look at his 2022 season compared to his 2023 season, he regressed in 2023 ever so slightly. And that's not a great
Yeah.
to see from a pitcher that is as young as he is. What is he? He's 20 years old when he first came in. Now he's 25. So he's 25 right now. So he regressed at the age of 24. And I know it's
But
slight,
his underlying numbers didn't regress.
but everything regressed slightly. His strikeouts per nine
Yeah.
regressed by a strikeout from 13.3 to 12.3. His ERA slightly ballooned up to 2.94 from 2.49. You know, his innings pitched declined. He was hurt a little bit more last year than the year before that.
But can you blame? So maybe he struck out a few less guys because of the injury. Can you blame the injury?
No, I'm not gonna blame the injury, but I just think that it's kind of. I hope he goes back to his 2022 form.
Oh, and I think he will. I mean, you look at this. This is what he was at last year as far as the percentiles. I'm loading it up right now. 94 percentile for expected ERA. I mean, how can you argue with that?
Because he's a
91
really good pitcher.
percentile,
He's a really good
98
pitcher.
fastball. The only thing he was low at was his walk percentage, and that's literally the only thing that he's low at is walk percentage. So
Yes, he's underrated, no doubt. I'm saying from
yeah,
a standpoint of he declined in 2023 compared to 2022, regardless of what the underlying numbers say, he did do that in 2023. I'm interested to see what happens in 2024.
and you're right. And you're right. Okay, I'll be fair. In 2022, he was 100 percentile in
Yeah.
expected ERA, and he was 100 percentile in fastball velo. So you're right. He dropped by about 5 percentiles.
So he's underrated, but he declined,
Yeah, but I think he'll get back.
which
I
is
think he'll be.
super rare that a player declines after a year and is still underrated, but teach their own.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have another pitcher, but now it's not gonna be a closer. And I'm interested to hear your philosophy. You think all shortstops are, overrated, all relievers are underrated. What do you think about third baseman? Kind of a
Third
random
baseman.
guy,
Okay.
Urias. What do you think he is? Overrated, underrated? Because he might be the difference maker. We'll throw in Rojas too.
Both of them?
Yeah, let's just get both of
Okay.
them out of the way. Because
So
those
here's the
are
take.
those are a couple guys that could genuinely determine the outcome of the Mariners
Yeah.
season.
Well, yeah, Luis Urias is either going to be one of Jerry DePoto's greatest trades of all time, or he is going to be one of the most forgettable players because he'll play for a month and then get cut because he's just bad. That's there's no way. I mean, it can't. It's never going to be a bad trade because we didn't give anything for him. But I think Luis Urias is overrated, and here's why. And it's because I'm on Twitter a fair amount. I see people on Twitter, Mariners fans on Twitter, who think that Luis
Or
Urias,
X.
who genuinely think that Luis Urias is better than Matt Chapman, better than Eugenio Suarez, that they think he's going to be like a top 5 third baseman in the game of baseball. And I just don't see that happening. I don't think Luis Urias. I mean, I hope as a Mariners fan, I hope, but from my like analytical perspective, I see a player who got injured last year and his game completely fell apart. And you can say, well, he got injured. Maybe he'll bounce back. And Levi, you just told me Ty France is going to bounce back after a bad season. Why can't Luis Urias also bounce back after a bad season? I don't know. Maybe it's just a feeling, but normally guys don't have as bad of like Ty France still hit 250 last year. Luis Urias hit like 180. And he went for two different teams.
But yeah.
And the Orioles weren't, or no, the Red Sox. The Red Sox, they weren't going to keep him. Like they were going to get rid of him. And then they just traded him to us instead. But that's pretty telling. When the team that you traded him from doesn't want him, they were going to cut him and eat the money. And instead, we picked up the money.
Yeah, and you know how you love it, baseball savant so much. I happen to be on the page. His
Yeah.
batting run value below average, base run value below average, fielding run
Is he
value
above it?
below average, expected weighting batted average below average. I mean, just all of these
It's
things.
all in the blue.
They're all in the red. I mean, sorry. Oh, I wish they were all in the red. They're all in the blue because blue indicates cold, I guess. It's kind of confusing when you think about it because usually red indicates bad, but whatever. Except for his chase percentage, which is pretty high. I mean, these are all not qualified because he didn't actually
Yeah.
have
And
enough.
I mean, if you look at his 2021 page, he was great in 2021. So maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. On a national level, he's fine. I wouldn't say he's overrated nationally because nobody really talks about him nationally, but
I wouldn't say he had a great 21 savant page, but yeah. Better, yes. He was an average.
Yeah.
He was an average third baseman. By pretty much all metrics, he was average. But then you look at his average exit velocity, which for a lot of people is the most important thing to look at for hitting, Levi. You know, can you hit the ball hard consistently? And you look at
what's that?
It was at 25% in 2021. And Levi seems to just be walking away right now. But you look at what like Mitch Haniger said back in the day when he got interviewed, what's his process at the plate? And his process is hit the ball hard and hit the ball hard consistently. And if Mitch Haniger goes out there and hits the ball hard 10 times and they're 10 outs, or he gets 10 dinky hits, he'd rather have the 10 hard hit balls, which is kind of surprising to hear, but it's true. And him having 25th percentile average exit velo of 87.9. Then you look at 2022, it fell to 18th percentile. In 2023, it's not qualified, but it's even lower. It looks like it's like bottom 5% at 84.9. That is the wrong direction you're going to go for. So we both think he's overrated. So let's hope Rojas isn't. Levi, what do you have Rojas?
I think Rojas might be a little bit underrated. Because Rojas, people say, oh, they're the same. They're not the same. Rojas last year struggled early, came to Seattle, and actually did pretty good for us. If you look at his splits from last year, he was like twice as good.
He started off cool, and then he started to heat up. Yeah.
Yeah, but he played a huge role. Remember that 22 game or 22 win August when we went 22-4? He played a huge role in a lot of those wins. I remember a couple times when I actually doubted him, and he came up in the ninth inning and got big hits and kept the games alive. And so I think Rojas, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say my expectation is that by May, this is not gonna be a platoon. I think Rojas is gonna be your starting everyday third baseman, and I think Urias is eventually going to get cut, and you're gonna see Ryan Bliss called up to replace him, and that's my guess. I could be totally wrong, but I think Rojas wins that job by just being a lot better.
I think Rojas will win that job simply because Urias won't be good, not necessarily because Rojas is going to be good. Look, Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander, they had a really good offseason, but the one thing I think they really missed on is third base. You look at both these guys, and it's really hard to convince myself that it's gonna be anything better than Suarez was last year, and it might not even be close. Baseball savant for 2023. I know we keep going back to it, but there is a lot of blue for 2023 Josh Rojas. Expected
Yeah.
weighted batting average, 6th percentile. Expected batting average, 16th percentile. Expected slugging, 4 percentile. Average exit velo, 14th. I mean, these are like really low. Barrel percentage, 9. Hard hit percentage, 7th. I mean, he's in the bottom 15% of like the most important
Yeah.
things for hitting a baseball. It's really, really hard to convince myself like this is the answer for third base. Like I frankly don't know, like, and then
Yeah.
it's like, oh well, maybe he'll go back to his 2022 year where he had 270. It's like, well, what did he do to now? He's up to 35th percentile for expected batting average. Like, it's still not good. It's just like not terrible. So it's like it's really hard to convince myself that Rojas is going to be anything like, he's going to be better. I think I'm going to agree with you, but I think he's slightly overrated. And I still think he's going to be the starting third baseman, which is like
Yeah.
really hard for me to say. But
And the other thing though is I fully expect that by July Ryan Bliss is going to be taking a lot of at bats for the infield.
I didn't love Ryan Bliss when I watched him in Tacoma, but
I know you didn't. I know you didn't. But I think Ryan Bliss figures it out, and I think he's going to play a role this year on the team.
hopefully, I just think third base is so. I mean, if Chapman's still on the board, like,
We're not signing Chapman.
I know we're not, but if our management
But
wasn't so
not that I
dumb,
would. I know the Locked On Mariners, who by the way blocked me on Twitter, but I know the Locked On Mariners
they blocked you on
really.
Twitter.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to say anything bad about the Mariners or else they block me. But
Wait, they
they
actually blocked you on Twitter?
oh yes,
Wait,
they
what
they're
happened
very
with that?
they're very adamantly opposed to Matt Chapman. Personally, I think Matt Chapman would be an improvement, but I know the big podcasters out there don't want Matt Chapman. Personally, if you're a good player, I'll take you.
But you got blocked on the NW Sportscast account.
Yup.
Jeez, Levi. Wow, we're really making
Yeah.
enemies. Here
Really
they are
make
doing. They're doing. Right now they're in the middle of a spotlight. A spotlight series where they're like putting on different MLB or Mariners shows onto their show and stuff. And
Yeah, I know.
it's like maybe I'll reach out to them. Guess not. Oh well.
Yeah, not.
We have a few more. We have 5 more minutes, so we have a couple more guys. I'm gonna leave center field for last, but I'm gonna go over to right field where you'll have Mitch Haniger, and that's gonna be an interesting guy. He comes back after a year away. He got injured. He's getting older. He's had a couple years without really any much performance. Do you think he's overrated, underrated? Because I think this is a guy that maybe on a national scene it might be close to underrated, but on a Mariners scene might be overrated. It's one of those rare scenarios.
Yeah, well, it's because obviously he has a history with the Mariners, and he was good with the Mariners. What do I expect out of him this year? I'm just praying he can play 50 games. Um,
Yeah,
I'll
that's
say he's.
true.
I think he's honestly pretty fairly rated. I expect that he'll be better than he was last year for the Giants. I think just being back home in Seattle is
And
going to be good
he
for
didn't
him.
play much. Yeah.
He didn't play much. He got injured twice, or maybe I think he might have gotten hurt 3 separate times last year, which pretty much par for the course for the dude who missed a full season because of a testicle injury. This guy is the most unlucky player in all of baseball when it comes to
Mhm.
injuries. He's the new Franklin Gutierrez. I that's like my nickname for him. He's Frank. He's Franklin Gutierrez. He's good when he's good when he's healthy. He's a good leader. I think I think being home in Seattle helps him. I think he'll be a little more healthy than last year, but I don't expect him to be, 2021 All-Star, 280, 30 bombs. Like if he does that, then we should win the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, the last time whenever he plays a lot, he's really good. He only has 2 qualified seasons in the last 5 years, in 2018 and 2021. And in both those years, his batting
Both
run
of them, he
value,
got MVP votes.
yeah, both those his batting run value is 85th percentile or higher. But when you look at the last couple years, it's tough. Let's see what Mitch Haniger can do. He's on the wrong side of 30, and we will see if Mitch Haniger can figure it out. And hopefully the sun down there in Arizona is doing good for his body, and he took care of himself this offseason, and he plays 100 games. But that might not happen, and I think the chances he plays 20 games is probably a lot higher than the chance he plays 100, and that's just me being realistic.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's a lot of guys who struggle with injuries, but then have randomly great seasons. Like Adam Duvall was really good for 2 years, got hurt, missed like 2 full seasons, comes back, wins the World Series, does really good again, and like he kind of just comes in and out of nowhere. So maybe Mitch Haniger can do that, where he just kind of, the past 2 years, I think he's played 50 and 60 games. But if he's healthy, why can't he be good? Now, like I said, I'm not expecting 30 bombs, but if he can hit 20 bombs, 260, competent defense, that's fine by me.
Yeah. We're going to end this video with Julio Rodriguez, center fielder.
Yep.
He received MVP votes. He's a top 10 player according to the MLB, but he still might be a little underrated. I don't know. I want to hear what you have to say first.
I know a lot of Mariners fans think that he's underrated, and maybe I would have thought that too a couple weeks ago, but I love where he's at. I honestly do. He's about the 10th best player in baseball. I agree. I think he is. If you take away Aaron Judge, who technically Aaron Judge is playing center field this year, Aaron Judge not really a center fielder though. Outside of that though, he's the best center fielder in baseball, and he's going to challenge Aaron Judge this year for the best center fielder in baseball. He's better than Mike Trout. I've been saying this for about half a year now, and people are like, "No, he's not better than Mike Trout. Mike Trout's the greatest player. He's the GOAT. He's the modern day. He's the best." Like Mike Trout was. That's correct. He was the best player. Mike Trout is not the best center fielder anymore. Julio is better than Mike Trout. The numbers, the underlying numbers,
Yeah.
that's what they say. And I mean, don't believe me? Go look at their baseball savant pages. Go look at their regular stat pages and tell me Mike Trout can barely stay on the freaking field. And Julio's out there making legendary catches every other night in center field and going on 16 for 17 hit streaks. I mean, that's Julio is I think he is right where he should be.
I would agree. I think he's properly rated. This is a guy that is in center field. He's super good, and I think everyone thinks he's super good. So,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like
personally, the MVP odds they have him, I think, fourth, behind Seager, Judge, and Juan Soto.
Yeah,
I would put him third. I'd put him ahead of Seager.
Just because a guy is super good doesn't mean he's necessarily underrated. Like Shohei Ohtani is really, really good. That doesn't mean he's underrated. You know what I mean? So I think
he's overrated.
Oh, I disagree with that, but all right. Well, we gotta go. So thanks for watching. This is the NW Sportscast, overrated, underrated. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And as always,
go Mariners.
see you guys.